Good morning, viewers, and welcome to your Tuesday edition of the Economy and Politics Show, where we look at developments, particularly in the oil and gas industry. It's September 22nd, 2020, and the conversation begins. Today, we'll be looking at repositioning Nigeria's oil and gas industry at a time it needs growth and sustainable development. That will be our focus of discourse today. And with me to lead this conversation is Mr. Bambo Ibidapo-Obe, is the General Manager, Commercial Operations, Oando Energy Resources Limited. Nice to have you on the show.
Thank you very much, Otto. It's my pleasure to be here.
Yes. As you all know that the oil and gas industry is among the sectors
across the globe that's been adversely affected by the COVID-19 pandemic and its disruptions. But amidst that, the industry is still navigating and exploring ways it can sustain its activities, create value, and also continue to support its economy. Also to our viewers, recently, the oil-producing exporting countries marked its 60th anniversary where it reviewed its operations and activities. Nigeria is a member of OPEC, and of course in this period, we are looking at how all the members, including Nigeria, will continue to sustain production and create value for their economies. Let's first begin with the overview of the contribution of the oil and gas sector to our GDP. As at first quarter 2020, it was about 5%, the major driver of growth. For the second quarter, it contracted. I'd like Mr. Kimabo to speak to the oil and gas sector. It still remains the major driver of activities in the economy up till now.
Thanks, Otto, for that. I think it's a perfect way to start the discussion. We always say that oil contributes the largest share of revenue to the Nigerian sector. This is both a good thing and it could also be, a disadvantage, if you will. Oil generates 90% of our foreign earnings as of today, and about 60% of all government revenue. So you can imagine with a volatile oil price that we would be adversely affected. It makes it a lot more difficult to plan. The silver lining in this is that we're not alone. It's a global issue. It's a pandemic, and the government has taken a lot of steps to try and curb this. We have readjusted our budget expectations, and we have sought financing elsewhere. And over the years, we've always tried to emphasize as a country the need to diversify and move away from oil as a sole source of a majority of our revenue, and try and get into agriculture, manufacturing, and etc. And a lot of what the pandemic has done, it has made that a lot more critical. But what I would also like to say about that, however, is that we can't move away from oil as an enabler or a facilitator. So what we have to do, we cannot, because the oil at the end of the day has to be the foundation for this diversification that we're doing. And the impact of doing that cannot be underemphasized. Like the government has taken up so many projects now to try and do that. We have the AKK pipeline, Jakarta,
gas pipeline. Yes.
Yeah, the gas pipeline. We have another one, OBOB, running from east to west. So you see, these gas pipelines will bring energy that can actually be the required infrastructure to spur other industries, for agriculture, for power. We need power to do anything else, and you need oil and gas for this power. So the right steps are being taken to diversify. But when we say we want to move away from oil, we should be careful that doesn't mean that you reduce your focus on oil. It just means that you increase your efficiencies with the oil, while at the same time beginning to invest in other industries. And I think that we're moving in the right direction.
Definitely, Mr. Bambo. That means there are some lessons to learn, particularly from countries like United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia, where they've been able to begin to push that. I guess that's the case you're looking at too.
Yes, definitely. There's some lessons to be learned from the other OPEC members and other oil producers as they also try and diversify with. But you see, I believe that Nigeria is truly in a unique position because we have a very, very we have a large population. There are 180 million Nigerians, and we have a significant amount of them that are very industrious and educated. So if we create, so it's two things. If we create the enabling environment using the facilitator of oil for the industries to emerge, we have the people here that can create those industries. We don't need to bring people in. And in addition to that, we have the consumers here, the customers here. So it will also reduce our import dependence, and then we can actually be self-sustaining. So I think the goal should be to be self-sustaining. It's not so much move away from oil. What's the actual objective? And we have all the tools, and we're moving in the right direction.
Okay, we have all the tools. We need to be self-sustaining, and we're moving in the right direction. I'll take that from you as someone that's already in the industry, and you know what's really happening there. But let's look at assessment of OPEC. I started by saying that OPEC marked 60 years, and among the major landmarks, according to Dr. Mohamed Bakindo, the Secretary General of OPEC, was the ability to also engage the OPEC Plus to a level of cooperation with the OPEC Plus, non-OPEC members in terms of production and agreement in that regard to bring some stability for quota productions for all members. But what's the assessment so far of the OPEC Plus meetings and activities, and what are the implications for Nigeria's oil production, which is very critical for translating to our revenue too?
I think that's a great question. I'll answer it in possibly two parts. The first of it is, it's an excellent development that we've been able to bring in the OPEC Plus members, because they realize it's a global issue. They can't stay away. And an agreement was, we were able to reach an agreement with regards to production costs to try and show up the price. The prices have been a lot more volatile had that not been, if it was a free for all, as it were. So that's a step in the right direction. But that is not to say that the impact has not still been felt. It's been cushioned, but with regards to impact, it's been felt by everyone, and by Nigeria quite specifically. We started the year with a plan to produce about 2.2 million barrels per day.
Per day.
And per day, and we were right around 1.8 million barrels, and that's what the budget was based on. With OPEC cuts, production cuts, we're now down to 1.4 million barrels per day. It's significant. If you calculate the government revenue from that, it's not just in the equity portion of the government investment in oil and gas, but also in royalties and PPT. Yes. So that's a petroleum profit tax. So it's been difficult, and the impact specifically to the independent and indigenous companies has been, a lot higher. We've had to find efficiencies where we can. The government has taken major steps, and there's been help from the Ministry of Petroleum to try and cushion the effect on the indigenous companies. You can imagine that a marginal field producer producing 1,000 barrels, a 20% cut is a lot more painful than someone that's producing 20,000 or 100,000 plus, especially if the oil price has already gone down significantly. Yes. So as an operator, what you're trying to do is optimize costs to be able to survive. So when you have production cuts, what you then need to do is be in a position to still keep the same operating structure so that you can ramp up or ramp down as those cuts change. But to do that, you may need to have higher costs than you would have. So it's complicated things, but I think it's the best move, and involving the other OPEC, the OPEC Plus countries has been able to cushion that effect.
Yes, and this also is going to definitely have impact on our revenue. Just getting the federal accounts allocation for the month of August period, we're looking at over 690 billion coming in. But definitely, revenue will be critical for the country, for the distribution. Particularly for now, what we do is we share the revenue across the three levels of government: federal, state, and local government. So that's very important. The major concern will be revenue, which of course the fiscal policymakers have emphasized. What are you seeing in terms of revenue prospects as we head to the last 3 months of the year?
I think, like you said, the bottom line is revenue. That's why we're in this business. The bottom line is revenue, responsibly and safely, of course. I think the government has made the right projections. As we said, we started with a budget benchmark, I believe, of about $56 per barrel. That's since been reviewed to about 30. Yeah, it's been revised to $30, and oil has averaged $40 year to date. So the government has taken the right steps to review it below what it is now. A minor cause for concern is while we've reduced our price target, we haven't reduced our production target. So we're still basing that on a production target that's no longer the case. So we would expect reduced revenues, and we've seen that. However, from a federal government perspective, they have been able to secure funding from international institutions like the World Bank and etc. And they've been able to do that very low rates. So while we're expecting a deficit, there's a plan in place. Now, for indigenous companies like us in Oando, we've taken steps as well to guard against this. We have a hedging policy, so that allows us to plan a bit more long term. Because, as you know, as an indigenous company, our cost of capital is a lot higher than the IOCs. So we need to kind of plan longer. As we spoke about earlier, it's a global problem. We're not alone in it.
Yes, you're not alone.
At the same time, we expect it to be temporary. I mean, it's taking longer than we want.
Yeah.
Longer than we want, but we want it to be temporary. It's not just the oil industry that's affected. It's all industries. So
yes.
At Oando, we're very audacious. We're tenacious. We're looking at it optimistically. So this is the time for great investment while costs are low. Prices are low, so costs can be low. You should make the investments now. Prices will definitely go up, and you'll be excellently positioned to take advantage of that.
Well, I like what you said, a time to make investments. And like you rightly said, it's a global phenomenon. I mean, we look at the global majors in the oil and gas industry, ExxonMobil, Schlumberger, Chevron, they are all impacted, and it has affected their revenue, bottom line. Even ExxonMobil is facing its own challenge in terms of paying shares. It's really a huge challenge, and they're even cutting down on their investments globally in terms of new platforms and additional investments to boost their operations. It's like you said, it's really a challenging time. And so any company in the oil and gas industry that is looking at new investments will be really commended, because that's audacious, like you said, amidst the challenging position and uncertainty. And that brings me to the opportunities for new investments in the Nigerian petroleum sector. We are already seeing some announcements, like the one of the refinery that's coming up in Akwa Ibom State, spanning to 2024. There's still the Dangote refinery. We're seeing other announcements and investment opportunities amidst these disruptions. Those projects are still ongoing and would definitely have impact on the sector. So what are we also hearing from Oando and other players, and particularly being a good testament of local content and development in the industry?
Okay, well, I'll start from the last part, local content, and we're an indigenous company. We're a Nigerian independent doing about 50,000 barrels of crude oil a day. We're focused on the upstream. And we believe that there are still huge opportunities in the upstream in Nigeria. There are, in excess of 37 billion barrels of proven oil reserves in Nigeria. And we also have, in addition to that, 180 trillion cubic feet of gas, which makes us about the 9th or 8th ranked on the planet. So the Minister of Petroleum has said that, this is even before the pandemic, that this was going to be a year of gas investments.
Yes, gas.
We have a lot of gas that we haven't been looking at, and the infrastructure now is becoming available for us to do that. At Oando, where we're doing about 50,000 barrels of oil equivalent today, 60% of that is in gas, supplying NLNG, supplying fertilizer. This is a business that you can grow. We have a power plant as well. this is a business that you can grow. We see the government has announced a marginal field bid round.
Yes, bid
on
rounds,
a very, very short timeline. So while I say we're audacious, I think Nigeria is audacious. The government is audacious.
Yeah.
So we're doing this now. We see more bid rounds coming up for exploration assets.
Yeah.
Those that have been in the industry for a long time, even the IOCs, they know it's in periods of low oil price that you want to get an asset, an oil asset, that you want to start the investments, because at that time, the costs are also low. So if you make your investments while the costs are low, when the oil price is high and the costs are high, you've already made your investment. So your profitability can be increased. And while a lot of the IOCs are talking about renewables now, we in our space are talking more about sustainable. So so while you can pivot to renewables, you can also pivot to sustainable as a larger word. So so gas is cleaner energy.
Yeah.
And we have 180 million people. Yes, we do have a lot of solar and sunlight, but let's use our gas first. We have one of the largest reserves, and we have a lot of people to take care of. So Oando is also trying to pivot towards sustainable energy, and we're making investments in that light, while at the same time realizing that there's still a whole lot of growth for indigenous companies, for independent companies. If we work together, you've spoken about some refineries coming up. Those projects are not being jeopardized because they know that the upstream of refining, the actual exploration and production, still has a lot of potential for growth.
Definitely. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, that's really that's encouraging, because, like I told you, if you look at the global majors, when we monitor what's happening in oil price, you see that a lot of these majors have cut down on their investments. And like you said, for example, the US, Chevron is going to solar. So other companies are looking at other aspects of renewables. And it's nice you're also looking at something that we have that is in huge surplus, gas reserves, which we can tap to drive industrialization. And you're right that the Ministry of Petroleum is taking that seriously. We hope that is sustained with the necessary support from the reforms side. But let's look at how the oil and gas companies, looking at the case example of Oando, is repurposing skills amidst the pandemic. What has been the learning points, and how have you repositioned, and how your industry players also taking it this period?
So I really must, I guess, commend myself, commend our industry on the on our response to the pandemic. First of all, Oando is we're unique in that we're an indigenous company. We're independent. I know I can't say that enough. So we have a vested interest in the success of Nigeria and Africa. So generally, we invest in all our host communities, impacted communities where we operate, and we invest in them as one of us. It's not so much as a CSR, as something that we believe we have to do, and that we do in the course. What has happened with that now is the pandemic has exposed a lot of the need to, it has made it more urgent. So a lot of the need to accelerate that development and try and contribute as much as you can. NNPC has led an excellent effort in how the industry has responded, spent over $50 million supplying PPE. We are partners as well in the NAOC JV, and there have been contributions there. We've built a hospital. We continue to supply ambulances, PPE to support the communities. So I mean, that's all public information. What we've also done in addition is we've realized that the pandemic will end. However, a lot of the assistance required will continue. And as Nigerians, it's more than just handing out to places where you work. It's about trying to uplift the entire country. So we have a particular initiative called Tap to Reach All that was started by the employees of Oando, or we would like to call the humans of Oando. And the idea for that is we're raising money, contributing ourselves to feed people that don't have food. So something basic like that, we've just picked that as our challenge. And we want to end the idea of anybody being hungry in Nigeria in the midst of all we have. So, there's a website. We fed about 30,000 people to date, and you can contribute online. The pandemic has taught us that we can actually use tools that already exist to try and create change. So
Definitely.
before this, we had Zoom, we had Microsoft Teams, we had all this stuff, but we didn't really use it. The pandemic has shown you now that these tools have a lot more impact. So we're using that now to try and create change. That's the one big thing. I think it's a good lesson that's come out is there's a lot of people need help. And even when the pandemic is over, we need to sustain that to bring everybody up.
Okay, so definitely in terms of the skills aspect in capacity building and all that, the oil and gas industry must have learned a lot in terms of remote working experience and operations and maintaining those guidelines and protocols for health in period.
Yes, most definitely. You see, it's almost a circular reference for us. Usually in the oil and gas industry, when you go through a period of low oil price, there's always a tightening of the belt and a cost reduction. And in trying to do that, you do learn new skills that even when the oil price it goes back up, you maintain that efficiency.
Yeah.
So the pandemic has been the cause of the volatility with the reduced demand, but at the same time, it has caused us to learn how to work remotely, work more efficiently, and try and derive the maximum impact with the minimum cost.
Yeah. So let's look at the outlook. I mean, we have 3 more months to wrap up the year, and of course, the petroleum sector remains very critical. Major revenue earners. So anything that's happening there is everyone is watching and has to know what's happening and hope it's to our good. But what do you see as the 2-3 key drivers of what will happen and shape our economy, particularly in the petroleum sector? What should really happen? We know that the oil price regime is now between $40 to $45. It's been volatile in that light. Oil production, I mean, we are doing our best to meet up with the quota, and we still have to make more revenue. Companies are trying their best amidst the challenge. Every oil and gas company has faced pressure in terms of maintaining operations, in terms of the fact that they have to reduce their investments due to the challenge of production and of course the disruption by the pandemic. What are those key things you're seeing that will shape the remaining part of the year?
Okay, for me, I believe the key focus for the rest of the year are, first of all, we've been going through this since February roughly. So we're approaching a stabilization where we all know what the environment is, and now the adjustments have taken place, and we should see a lot less volatility. We know where oil price will be. We know where costs are going to be. I believe the government has also taken some excellent steps to try and merge that timing in such a way that we're going to have the closing of the marginal field bid rounds, which will bring a lot of new players into the upstream. And that's also going to spur a lot of economic activity, especially since this time around, there's going to be tight timelines for you to meet milestones to get to production. So that's going to spur the economy, spur employment in the sector. So I see that happening very quickly. And then there's also the PIB that we've been talking about for such a long time.
Very important.
Yeah, if the PIB
long overdue.
There you go. It will also give us a lot of stability. You know, when you have stability and you can plan. Yeah. So there's that. I'm very optimistic, and I continue. I believe that what we're going to see going towards the end of the year and going forward is really a rise of the Nigerian independence and a rise in their contribution to the Nigerian economy and to the people. So, I mean, it's great to talk about the Chevrons and Exxons, but as they begin to pivot to other things, then we should start talking about the Oandos in the same breath, if we're not already doing so.
Yeah, yes, definitely. And talking about the Petroleum Industry Bill, it therefore calls for the industry, particularly all key players in Nigeria, the indigenous companies, to see how they can work more closely, engaging the National Assembly members to push on this bill. I mean, it's very important. I mean, in the West, we've seen how they form lobby groups to push in for legislations that will impact the industry positively. I guess that's the thinking and of your industry players.
Yes, that's correct. This particular government has engaged with the indigenous companies and with the IOC as well. They've engaged with the industry. I believe that the Petroleum Industry Bill has moved. They understand the challenges and also the aspirations of the companies. So that's happening. That's happening, and towards the end of the year, we expect to see quite a lot of movement in Q4. So it's an optimistic outlook. It's an optimistic outlook.
Definitely. And looking at the decisions around gas stations across the country, that again brings to the fore some of the things that we talk about: sustainable energy, tapping into our resources. Is that a good step taken by the Ministry of Petroleum Resources?
When you say gas stations, I don't know if you can just clarify that.
Using the gas, I mean, enabling gas stations across the country, gas filling stations.
Oh, right. No, definitely. The pivot to gas is an excellent step by the Nigerian government, and it's one that we've spoken about for many years now. We have a lot of gas that we're not utilizing, and we're starting to create the infrastructure that we're trying to conclude the creation of the infrastructure that will allow us to do that. I don't think it's we have an option. It's a case of speed, and we can see the acceleration in that process now. We have to move to gas. It's a cleaner fuel. It's more sustainable, and we have a lot of it. And we have a huge market even within our own borders. So as people talk about globally, as people talk about, demand for crude oil is going to go down. We've already reached peak oil production. What they don't talk about, and we need to tell our own stories, is that we have 180 million people in Nigeria that need crude, that need power, that need energy to diversify the economy, and even outside of Nigeria, in Africa as a whole. So the market is there for us. We don't have to look at it in terms of what's required in Europe or what's required in North America. Okay. Even within our own sphere, the market is there, and we have to be brave enough to take those steps.
Yes, we have to be brave enough to take those steps in terms of this whole gas industrialization. The AKK gas pipeline, like you said, is a welcome development, and we hope to see more of those projects that can harness gas reserves, because definitely that's a big boost for us when you look at what is happening in climes like Russia, particularly, who's a major player in gas. But what will be your closing thoughts in terms of making our industry, the oil and gas industry, continue to be sustainable and then drive industrialization, and like you said, economic diversification in revenue, because already the economy is diversified, but that revenue base is not diversified till now.
Yeah, you're correct. I think in closing, I would just like to harp on two things. The oil and gas industry has to be seen as a facilitator for diversification of the economy. There's no way that we're going to be able to. We have to use what we have. We have a lot of oil and gas. We have to use it and build other things on top of that. To do that, we have to create efficiencies. We have to create sustainability. And we also have to find a way to keep the revenue in country. So we need to continue to enable indigenous companies, independents, so that the money stays here. At Oando, we employ Nigerians first. It's not because we have qualified people here. So that's what we look for. That's the one thing that I would say is important. The second thing that's important, except for looking at it as an enabler, is also having a positive outlook. Have a positive outlook. We're very optimistic. There's been no better time than now. This is an opening for indigenous companies and Nigerian companies in particular to claw back some of those assets, to jump into the industry with both feet first. The clientele is there, the consumers are there, and the support is there from the government. So we're willing to take those steps, and the government, I think, also believes in that. That's why you see things like the Marginal Oilfields Round that's coming up right now. I can't emphasize that enough. There's a lot of excitement in the industry. It's going to create a lot of jobs and a lot of revenue for the government, and they're taking it extremely seriously. We expect on the back of that a full bid round and also the PIB. So you're going to see a transformation in the industry that will contribute significantly to the revenues, even in the oil and gas. So don't be scared that the amount of contribution in the oil and gas is still going to be high, but see it as an enabler, because the more investment you have there, the more it creates opportunities in other sectors that they can take off.
Yes. I mean, you said it. You said, Mr. Bambo, that it should be seen as
an enabler for a diversification in terms of revenue, which examples are in UAE, United Arab Emirates, and even Saudi Arabia. We should also be excited about the new marginal rounds, full bid, which you've talked about, and we'll be monitoring it because it's expected that it will be a transparent marginal round in terms of the bids and the whole process to very competent firms. And also you said it's an opportunity for indigenous companies. I mean, when we look at Oando, Seplat, and even the operations from these companies definitely show that there's a lot that can be done from indigenous oil and gas companies. So you're saying it's an opportunity to explore more investments and strategies to drive the sector. And then most interestingly, the PIB, the Petroleum Industry Bill. All hands must be on deck to make this bill become a reality. We've seen the KAMA Act signed into law. We've seen interesting bills across the country. So definitely all eyes will be on deck to see if the PIB will be signed into law, because it will definitely transform the industry and move our economy forward. So indeed, despite the volatility, the uncertainties, and the impact of COVID-19 on the oil and gas industry, there are still opportunities and positive things to look out for in that space, and definitely we're monitoring them in the course of our program every Tuesday. Thank you very much, Mr. Bambo Ibidapo-Obe, the General Manager Commercial for Oando Energy Resources, for this time and this conversation as we looked at repositioning our oil and gas industry to drive sustainable growth and development in Nigeria. It was nice having you on the show.
Thank you for having me on the platform, Otto. I enjoyed it immensely. Thank you so much.
And we look forward to having you to speak on subsequent shows on what's happening in terms of investments and growth in the industry.
Anytime. I'll have more good news.
Thank you. And that'll be all for this edition of the Economy and Politics Show. You can send your comments and views to news@proshenji.com. We're always available to listen to them and respond appropriately. Also, you can join our website, www.proshenji.com, to watch our videos, read our news reports, and analysis. Join us by 10 a.m. for the Tuesday edition of the Market Review, where we bring you developments in the financial and capital market as it affects the economy. To come your way again, thank you for watching. Have a nice day and stay safe.